Welcome, everyone. In this session, we have Lisa Cohen, Director of Data Science at Twitter, presenting tips for effective data science in the enterprise. Just a quick note that please put your questions in the Q&A box instead of the chat. Lisa, it's off to you.
Wonderful. Thank you for the intro, and thank you everybody for joining today. I'm excited to chat throughout this session and just share a bit about my journey in data science in a couple different companies and the learnings along the way. So we'll break down the talk into a few different sections. First, we'll talk about some of the different roles and career paths within data science, some tips as far as approaching data science projects and various considerations that occur with data science in the industry. So I thought I'd start off just by sharing a bit of, things that I aspire for within a data science organization to set some context, some of the goals that I like to think about. One is about the technical approaches and application of data science. So thinking about, what are the top industry practices and ensuring that we're leveraging those in our craft. Secondly, it's not just those technical skills in isolation, it's also that context that really allows us to fully leverage the power of data science within industry. And so being the data science org that's not perceived as kind of academic or removed, but really understands the business and really is a partner, a co-owner in that overall business goal along with the other functions. That also comes up in terms of how we share our input. So providing, relevant, if we go off and do some data science research, ensuring that it's relevant for what the business problem is at hand, sharing that in a way that's understood and interpreted well by the stakeholders. I talked about being a strategic partner, being curious and innovative thinkers. So again, not just kind of taking requests, but kind of reflecting on what is the data that we see. I think curiosity is a great trait for data science. Let's see, and then having good structure and processes. There's just an infinite number of questions, and so otherwise we can end up getting randomized. So really sitting back and thinking about how can we have the biggest impact, how can we best optimize within the resources we have, and having good frameworks around that. And then finally, I often talk within the data science org around what our values are and what we all want to be there to do. And it comes to, wanting to have fun, to collaborate, to learn and grow together. And so creating environments and practices that enable that. So I thought I'd share a bit about my path just so that you have some context about the experiences that I'm going to be gleaning from with the rest of the talk today. So starting off with the academic background, my bachelor's and master's were in applied math with some CS and electrical engineering focus. And so always, really enjoy that kind of quantitative and applied science thinking. I explored some different roles within academia and industry, and ultimately ended up taking a role at Microsoft, working on Visual Studio. So I was in product at that point, and I was just really excited to work on a product that helped millions of users and enable us to build software around the world, doing so many amazing things. So I shipped multiple versions of Visual Studio, learned a ton about development processes and best practices. And then ultimately moved into a role where I was kind of thinking more broadly about the divisional strategy, gathering feedback. And then as I went through that and big data was growing, then we were increasingly interested in the quantitative as well as the qualitative feedback. And so that's where I started focusing more on the telemetry pipelines, our performance analytics, business analytics, started exploring different segmentation models to cluster our users, and set up some consistent practices and metrics regarding how we review the business as a whole. Then I ended up doing a similar role initially with Azure, and then that grew as well. We were focused on a lot of the business programs, so working with the marketing team and helping optimize their investments, working with support and developing machine learning models to help with their queue. Sorry, one moment. Okay. Working with the sales team to help with cross-sell and upsell initiatives, as well as various data science research to improve our funnel and retention. And then my current role, I'm a director of data science at Twitter. I work on our discovery and connection space, which is a lot of the things you know and see if you have used Twitter before, from how you sign up and onboard to come, leveraging the notifications to come back to the app, and then connecting within the app to navigate the public conversation, whether that's through your home timeline feed, searching for various aspects in Twitter, exploring the trends and events as they occur, and it's been a lot of fun. I think I've had an opportunity to kind of use a lot of the similar data science techniques, but obviously to another product and user base. Other things that I also have continued in parallel is being a board member for a number of universities, and enjoy blogging and speaking and networking with other data science leaders. So as far as the different roles in data science, I've noticed that some folks attending this event today are already in data science today. Others are exploring data science and considering joining. And so just wanted to offer that there's so many different ways to engage with data science from different functions and related roles. And so just shared a number of them here. One, which is going to be the focus for the rest of the talk, is around the field of data science. And there, I think that the things we often deliver are analyses, experiments, or observational studies, and then use machine learning techniques as well. There's also the data analyst role, helping run the business and understand trends. And then going further into the machine learning space, if you want, kind of a primary part of your focus to be focused there, there's machine learning scientists, research scientists helping develop algorithms, machine learning engineers helping implement them in like an AI product, data engineers helping build the data platform and pipelines, and then also a number of different PM roles around this too, whether that's a product manager on a AI type product with a live service, or a TPM who can help manage the data science process. We'll talk a bit how about there's a lot of planning that gets involved and coordination between different dependencies. So PMs can play a great role there too. And then within data science, I like to think about like three main categories I think that we both recruit for as well as grow our skills in as we go. The technical category, fairly broad, but just the various technical skills that are involved with being able to operate independently and sufficiently for to carry out any analysis or data science problem at hand. So this can come from the problem solving, framing approach, statistics, having good sound judgment there, querying languages, working with big data, machine learning skills, all the different stages of building a ML model, and data viz. And then on the domain side, again, we talked about how we want to apply those technical skills to the domain. And so in that case, it can be the product that you're working on, whether that was Azure in one of the roles that I mentioned, or now the Twitter product. And so really understanding both the product as well as the user engagements with that, and becoming an expert, basically the one who's kind of telling the story about how the product is used through data and numbers. And then another aspect of the domain I think that we focus on being an expert in is the data sets itself. So as you're establishing yourself in a role, becoming really familiar with the data, with the expected ranges, the refresh rates, and all the nuances. And so when we have different subject matter experts in different areas, I think having someone who has that context helps set them up for efficiency and also to ensure that they have accurate results. And then I think there's a host of soft skills that, maybe for lack of a better categorization name, that are involved in terms of really helping us be successful in our role. One is around communication. So all the data science work that we do, a lot of the impact is often through stakeholders and partners and helping influence the direction of the business. And so that requires strong communication to be able to have that impact and influence. Organization. So I mentioned there's, just an infinite list in terms of our backlog and what we could be working on. And so being able to take structured approaches for what we prioritize and do, as well as just even how we approach the problems at hand. I think sometimes we have a lot of ambiguous problems that we engage on, complex problems, and just to be able to create simplicity adds a lot of value as well. cross-group collaboration we mentioned, and teamwork. I think we come from all different backgrounds, and being able to collaborate across the group provides the best result as well. As far as the data science org that you join, and this can also vary by the company size, but there is a model where you can be embedded within a business team, so you might be reporting to a different function. I think more and more I see the centralized model, which is probably more common at this point, where if you're developing a career in data science, you're reporting within a data science org, and that enables mentorship and kind of career path. I think both have pros and cons and different ways to navigate and work through. I think if you're embedded, you have a lot of context from your group, but then you kind of want to invest in building a data science community and others that you can chat with. I think that also applies if you're joining a startup, and there might be you might be the first data scientist there, and so maybe having a network of other data scientists at startups can be helpful there as well. And then with the centralized model, you're in data science org, but you really want to embed yourself within that business team that you're a part of. So currently my key cross-functional partners are engineering, product, design, and research. And so, having forums where all of the disciplines are sitting together, and you have that context of the business so that you can play a key role there as well. So here's kind of a more complete picture of the overall data science process for machine learning. And I thought I would just take us through a simplified version to talk about a few of the different aspects that arise as we approach a data science problem. For one, I think when we do planning cycles within our team, and I think when we approach that, you want to look at, there's always a long list of stakeholder requests that you've received from different parties, and so that gets considered. It's in your prioritized list. And then I like to also reserve a good chunk of time for reflecting on what are the overall business and product goals that we want to achieve, and what are some DS approaches that we can take to solve them. Maybe it's a pattern that you've noticed across the different requests that have come in. Maybe there's some kind of infrastructure or system or a library that you can develop that that addresses them all. Or maybe it's a more of a long lead research where maybe the requests coming in might be more incremental, and you want to actually investigate, is this even the right thing we should be investing in at all? And so I think hack weeks can be great opportunities for that, to step back and, outside the confines of what you've already been working through, be able to reflect broadly on passion and interest areas. Focus weeks are another approach we've used as well. And then I think just kind of keeping some time in the backlog. I try not to leave it just open-ended, but maybe towards, at a particular altitude, some general problem area, a goal that you want to accomplish. That gives you the best chance of success, that when you ultimately complete this deliverable, it's going to be something that can be leveraged by the group. And I think sometimes it can be hard to create that space, but I think that there's usually a good reason why, as a data scientist, you want to work on that problem area. You have a good hunch, you've seen the data, you actually have a lot of context from what you're exploring every day, and ultimately your partners really want to hear about that innovation and thought leadership that you have as well. Okay, so then once you have your problem list and you choose what you're going to investigate or research, then kicking off a project. We talked a bit about the planning process. I find that we have to do a lot of prioritization within data science, and these are a few of the questions that I typically like to ask. What new capability will this project enable? What decision or action will we take as a result? That question is really helpful for helping weed through curiosities to things that will actually have a greater impact. And then along those lines, being able to reflect, this doesn't have to be super precise, but just like, what's the expected business impact that this will have in the end, kind of helps us frame and orient ourselves to, what story we'd be able to tell at the end of this project. Then, stepping back to design our approach, reflecting there, acquiring the data, and at that point, ensuring, that we really do that exploratory data analysis up front, exploring completeness, ranges and distributions. And I put a reminder about applying a sniff test here, because I think, again, being an expert in the data set, in order, the quality of your analysis or model is only going to be as good as the underlying data. And so ensuring that you have a good sense within your area of what those expected ranges and numbers are, so that you'll notice when there are data quality issues, and be able to set the rest of your project up for success. There's a number of different engineering and quality standards that we think about as we go through the project as well. So in a broader data science org, you want to have source control for your code, ways to share code easily across team members, ensuring that it's not just shared like in email. Having a more sustainable process there, having a data dictionary so that you can have alignment and consistency on your metrics and definitions. Data contracts and SLAs, especially for production models, very important to understand all your upstream dependencies and expected SLAs from that front. Privacy, compliance, and ethics are always considerations throughout. And then I put a number of different ideas there on the right regarding ways to ensure that you're sharing your work with others, having good opportunities to gain feedback, learn about blind spots, and then retrospectives, big fan of as well, ensuring that we're regularly reflecting on what's working well, what's not, and ideas we can do to improve going forward. And that really helps us accelerate our progress. So then lastly, reflecting on, what are some of the scenarios that arise in the world of data science? Definitely the question of causation versus correlation comes up a lot. In product data science, we definitely use experimentation, observational analyses, feature flags and holdbacks to be able to understand the impact that any one change is making. Understanding ship criteria for when we launch, as well as the overall impact in our holdbacks. Experimentation considerations. I think there's kind of when you learn about experiments theoretically, but then when you actually go to launch them, there's additional considerations like how long the experiment's going to take to launch might influence whether you take that approach first, or the opportunity cost of leaving out, for example, some top customers in your control group might be challenging. It might be more of a case for observational study, and then ethical considerations around whether that's even the right thing to do. Sometimes I find that done and simple are better than perfect. So we might have an idea of a more complicated model that's going to take longer to develop, but sometimes a simple heuristic can be a great way to help the group continue to make progress. So we will sometimes ask, is this interim solution better than what we're using today? Then it's still a step forward. And the other thing I find in that process is that sometimes having a solution that you can do within a couple weeks versus a few months also helps the business and the team around it, start to adapt and get to learn the problem space better. And so while we might have an idea of what we're setting out to achieve, once we start working this way, let's say there's a new process or decisions that we're going to do based on data versus some other maybe rules that were available in the past, it kind of helps figure out the rhythm around it and how the outputs are going to be used in a way that kind of helps us better inform that longer term model, and we kind of learn more faster that way. So it's like an MVP approach. The 80-20 rule, that's another interesting one as well. Like if you develop a model and there's really, one or two primary features, sometimes just having a heuristic based on those features might be more efficient in the end than needing a more sophisticated model. Model explainability comes up a lot as well, whether that's, around a model that you're using internally for marketing, sales, or the field to use. They want to understand why you're making these recommendations in order to trust the model. And so having some text or explanation that helps them understand why this customer or this sort order was preferred is helpful there, as well as in a live ML service where that's kind of a core part of the product features for your external users. They want to understand also why you're recommending this ad or content or item to them based on what the what rows that to the top as well. Skewed populations we see a lot as well, and like having particular techniques that help us with imbalanced data sets and help with experiments with sparse data sets. So that's a consideration as well. And then we talked about data quality a bit earlier and exploratory analysis, but I think there's a lot of talk and literature and focus on the model, finding the highest performing model and that sophistication. But often I find that investing in the underlying data set can actually have a huge impact in the performance of the model as well. And so just ensuring that we're reflecting on that and making investments there is really key too. And so lastly, as we complete our project or model and share it more broadly. We talked about like the communication skills earlier. I think this is really critical because any of our solutions in a vacuum are not going to have as much impact. We really need to be able to share them, influence, and have them be adopted. And so for one, keeping your stakeholders in the loop from the very beginning, so everybody's brought along for the journey, I think is really important there, and they get updates at different stages. And then throughout that, being able to speak within their language, knowing their context, helping present your results is key as well. And there's, on the data visualization side, a number of techniques we can do to really simplify the perspectives and visuals that really help land these points also, and kind of give you better visual aids and help focus the audience on the key point that you want to land.
Sorry to interrupt, Lisa. Just a quick reminder to wrap up so we have time for Q&A.
Absolutely. So I'll go to the last slide here and just some tips regarding as you grow your career in data science. So I think as you're starting off, a few things to really focus on are really developing the core, your core skills, becoming a subject matter expert in your space, having a good cadence of deliverables so you can learn from those results and see the impact. Then as you continue to grow, you get comfortable and proficient in that space, then growing more broadly within scope and thinking about how you can have more transformative impact versus incremental, bringing up new ideas, remembering that you have all that great insight from the data you've been exploring and your experiences, and having that confidence to share that broadly and recommend new approaches. Becoming more of a representative of the team and mentoring others and thinking beyond your defined area. And then as you continue that, kind of continue the right there, mentoring and networking with others, always continuing that learning for continuous growth through books and courses, events, whatever that might be, and having a broader impact and connection within your company or the industry can be great ways to learn broader approaches, whether that's on the technical or application of those skills, etc.
Great.
And with that, yeah, I have a number of ways to keep in touch. So, feel free to reach out through LinkedIn or read any of the blogs that I've written on this topic, of course, Twitter as well. And then we'll go ahead and move to Q&A.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa, for this great talk. We do have a few questions here. We have one for, hi, Lisa. As more and more domains are hiring data science professionals, do you have any advice for the first data science in the functional team, how to build the data science roadmap if there isn't anything established?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for that first data science, data scientist role, I think there's a lot of focus in data engineering and data analysis to start, because first you need to have your instrumentation or scribing, ensure that the things that you want to measure are instrumented in a way that you can actually track that. And then secondly, just the first step is counting. So just knowing, what your funnel is, how many customers you have, how many users there are for various areas. I know we talk about, the more sophisticated models, but again, we kind of need that core foundation in order to be able to experiment and innovate from there. And then as far as the roadmap, at that point, you're also really being mindful about you're positioning the role of data science within the organization. And so thinking about what are the key business goals for the company, helping define those KPIs or OKRs for the group. And then that's going to help create a structure that, all the models and everything you develop after that are going to optimize for growing those specific numbers.
Okay, we have a little less than a minute. We have another question. Could we get a little more detail about the 80-20 rule? That bullet point went by a little fast for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for bringing that back up. Yeah, the point there is it's essentially a lens on the point that I think we were discussing on the bullet before around the done is better than perfect. Sometimes an 80% solution can actually be a lot more effective and more efficient for the audience than perhaps the 100%. And sometimes the simpler solution can also be a little bit more understandable for the audience as well.
Great. Thank you so much for the great presentation. This concludes our sessions. If you have additional questions for our speaker, you may send a direct message to her in Excel events or reach out to her on LinkedIn or the other links she included in her at the end in her end slide. We did have one question about whether her slides would be shared. If she does share them, then we will be happy to include them with the recording that comes out later in the summer. We will be sending out information to all of you, so you will get that information. So thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. And yes, happy to share the slides after. Thanks for joining, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa.